Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm excited to have Kaylin Bance and Dave Riggs here with me today hosting the webinar. I am Amy Knock and I will be moderating today's session. Before we begin, I just wanted to let you know more about how the webinar will run. The webinar is being recorded and the slides and recording will be available to you within 3 business days. A short Q&A session will follow the presentation to answer any viewer-submitted questions that you may have. During the webinar, you can submit questions you have using the webinar sidebar menu. Select the Questions tab, type in your question, then hit the Enter key on your keyboard. Remember, you can submit questions anytime throughout the webinar. That concludes my very brief introduction today. Dave, I will now pass the webinar off to you. You may begin your presentation.
Thank you so much, Amy. Today, our team of Eurofins scientists hopes to share valuable insight and information about ways to understand overall risk in your supply chain and also approaches to mitigate that risk or any disruption to your production while maintaining a safe, pure, high-quality finished product for your brand. We're also going to share some considerations when considering an external lab or a trusted partner or consultant to assist with you in improving your product safety, stewardship, or risk mitigation. In terms of what we're going to cover on the webinar, we're really kind of breaking it up into 4 sections. So first, we're going to have an introduction, kind of explaining the overview of things. Then we're really going to dig into where risk can occur, both within the supply chain, within your manufacturing process, with an emphasis on ingredient purity, potency, safety, and control. Next, we're going to turn over to my colleague, Kaylin Bance, who's going to get into more of the nuts and bolts of different tools, techniques, analysis, specifications, things of that nature, to think about in terms of your ingredient testing, verification, raw material and finished product acceptance, and also places to look for mitigating risk. Then we'll do some considerations when considering a third party, a laboratory or consultant, or anyone who is your partner really in the whole quality and risk mitigation process. And finally, we hope to have an interactive question and answer session. In terms of our speakers today, I'm David Riggs. With me is Kaylin Bance. Also, Joshua Ryan is on the line. And although not listed, Kelly Peschman, who is our laboratory director for our monograph and ingredient safety group, she's here also as a panelist for during the question and answer session. Combined, the 4 of us have over 80 years of industry experience, and I won't say that we've seen it all, but we have seen a lot, and we look forward to your questions at the end. In terms of a little bit just about just Eurofins, this particular lab we're broadcasting from, it's in New Berlin, Wisconsin. That's a suburb of Wisconsin. We were founded in 1900. And we've been owned by Eurofins since 2014, but we've done really problem-solving, investigative-based, analytical, really problem-solving, challenging testing. Since the 70s, we've done fine chemicals and monograph testing since the 90s, so we've got a lot of experience. We like to think we're kind of the lab to call when you don't know who to call. Our nickname is the MacGyver Lab. But more importantly, we're part of the greater Eurofins network ISO 17025 laboratories. We're accredited by A2LA. We actually have a dual accreditation, both the ISO 17025, but also for CGMP compliant quality management system for 21 CFR Part 111 for dietary supplements, also 210 and 211 for pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, excipients. We're licensed by the Drug Enforcement Agency, Wisconsin DNR. We actually have 4 different USDA licenses for importing meats, dairy, seeds, other challenging matrices that maybe garner the attention of regulatory agencies. So we like to tell people we can basically receive any type of sample that's not a weapon of mass destruction. And unfortunately, we've done it a lot. And we're part of the Eurofins Global Network, which consists of more than 900 labs. I believe we're up to 57 countries now. Over 400,000 different tests, and around 56,000 employees, and rapidly growing with both organic growth and acquisitions. And the nice thing is we can kind of offer a one-stop shop. So even if we can't do the test here, we can reach out to our colleagues in the Eurofins network and find a solution for you. So it's kind of like the Amazon of lab testing, and we're really excited to offer that service. Marketing reminded me, we have a raffle alert. So 5 of the attendees on today's webinar will be placed in a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. If you are a winner, someone will reach out to you, probably Amy, Amber, maybe Kaylin, and they'll, unfortunately, we'll snail mail these or overnight them out. So in order to receive it, you will have to share a mailing address, but we keep all that in confidence. So if you are selected and you want to receive a gift card, just communicate with them on a safe and secure manner in the days to come, and we'll overnight that gift card to you. We want to thank everyone for attending. Looks like we've got hundreds of people around the world, which is, I guess that's exciting, and hopefully it's a little bit scaring too. So we're kind of scientists, so marketing isn't really our thing, so hopefully we won't stumble and stammer too much. Also want to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can use the chat function, and Amy and Amber and our Cracker Jack team of marketing folks, they'll collect all those, and when we do the Q&A, we want to make sure that every person's questions is addressed. All right, risk to your supply chain. I probably don't need to explain that much to folks, because every time you turn on the news, you hear about disruptions in the supply chain, and the global situation is rapidly changing. You hear about cargo boats waiting for weeks or months off the east and west coast, waiting to be unloaded, and even if they are unloaded, maybe there's a shortage of truckers or rail cars or all types of different issues. And this is really true around the world. But the important thing is they're constantly changing, they're constantly under pressure, and oftentimes what happens is the delays in the supply chain or the changing raw material suppliers is going to cause a fire drill or something that's going to require you to pivot or make a change in your raw material specifications, who your approved suppliers are, specifications, everything that you need to be prepared for when thinking about all the different control points from raw material receipt, product release, and everything in between. So you should think about, developing a flow chart or a blockchain or something so you understand where all the different points are within there. And then some of the tools and techniques we're going to talk about during the workshop, you can actually start to develop concrete action plans to really take control of the situation, mitigate risk, and maybe gain competitive advantage if you do it right. So people start thinking about risk, and risk is unavoidable. It's always been there. It's just maybe been brought to the spotlight in recent years. Whether that's from pandemic, climate change, regulatory updates, our consumers are always demanding. And I think it's safe to say in the last 2 to 3 years, the pace of those types of things has accelerated. Whether that's shortages of labor, shortages of supplies, and other things that are yet to be determined in the future, the best thing is to be prepared and start to identify your hazards and really understand the whole flow from when a specification or raw material is en route to your facility and then all the way through to your finished product, and even after the fact in case there's inquiries from your customers. But you should really break down your risks into 3 basic categories. Number 1 is physical, pretty straightforward. Those are things you can measure: temperature, pressure, dimensions. And they're going to apply to things like plastics, glass, filth, extraneous. Then you get into your chemical. That's going to be your allergens, your heavy metals, your residual solvents, the types of things. They're probably getting measured with a sophisticated, instrument or analytical device. And then finally, you have biological. So these could be pathogens. Some are good. If it's in a probiotic, it's good for your gut. Most are bad. Salmonella, Listeria, E. coli, COVID, things of that nature. And of course, there's hundreds of thousands of different microorganisms, yeast, mold, bacteria, spore producing agents, which can be tested for in a variety of different platforms. So next, you need to think about, okay, there's these different risks. What are the kinds of things that can go wrong? Well, you could have food fraud, adulteration, upstream or downstream. And unfortunately, claims of food fraud and adulteration are skyrocketing. Because it's more difficult to travel and audit, unfortunately, there are nefarious people within the supply chains kind of playing the catch me if you can game. So you really need to be vigilant in terms of your auditing, your quality control, your quality assurance. And in the words of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. And the best way to verify is with a good inspection and testing program. Poor quality seems to be on the rise because of insufficient purity, high levels of contamination. If things are in short supply, maybe it's better to take an off-spec product than having no product at all, but then disclose that to your companies. Packaging failures. It's not just toilet paper that's been in short supply the last couple of years, but a lot of the traditional packaging materials, cardboard, bags, plastics, and these tend to be very sophisticated packaging systems, multi-layer with complex closures, and a lot of those are hard to get. So people have had to scramble to maybe change their packaging, or now they have a longer supply chain and they have to worry about freezing and thawing and going onto boats or longer shelf lifetimes. So that's put a lot of challenges on packaging. Obviously, product rejection, recalls, and quarantines have always been there. I think the consumer continues to become more demanding, more discriminating, has access to more information, and so they're going to scrutinize things more closely. So those things tend to be on the rise. Obviously, people are very, very careful about what they put in their body. We see that with people working out more, getting outdoors, a lot of really favorable trends, taking more supplements, but they're more conscious of foodborne illnesses, physical harm from hard objects or foreign materials or adulterated ingredients. So there's more scrutiny on that. We need to be vigilant and develop a risk control, risk mitigation plan that's going to help to prevent those types of things. Obviously, legal actions, that's always been there, but certain states have very plaintiff-friendly. You see a lot of class action lawsuits for things. You want to be in position to defend yourself against frivolous thing, and the best way to do that is good, solid data from whether it's your internal lab or a third-party lab, or having good advice, whether that's from legal counsel, external consultants, doing your own auditing and advisory services, or using a third-party reputable lab. Negative news travels rapidly. People have a bad review at a store or at a restaurant or something. They tend to post it, whether it's on social media, Twitter, places like that. They post the negative stuff. Unfortunately, they don't tend to say, oh, I had a great experience at the XYZ restaurant, or with, this or that lab, or with this, packaging supplier. The good news, they only talk about maybe 1 in 10 times. The bad news, they talk about 9 in 10 times. So you have to be really careful to avoid the negativity, and which can impact your brand, your stock price, your boss, and your CNV level suite. Next, there's a lot of changes in terms of regulatory drivers. Usually when I start talking about the Food Safety Modernization Act or the Code of Federal Regulations, people go to sleep. And we do have some references we'll include when we send out the PDF copy of the slide deck. They do have a couple of links to fda.gov that are useful. But there's been a lot of changes for dietary supplements under Part 111, a lot of changing things for OTC, pharma, and excipients. And remember, excipients oftentimes are the same ingredients that are going into foods and beverages, but if they're going into a pharmaceutical as a filler or an inert thing, they may just have a little bit tighter specs. So you have a conscious of that, especially for those companies that sell into both pharma and into the food and dietary supplement space. But really it comes down to what is the quality, identity, purity, strength, and composition of the ingredient. If going to be established on the specification or the C of A that my colleagues will talk about. We need to establish limits for the contaminants. In many cases, California Prop 65, US Pharmacopoeia, EP, ACS, they already have established specifications, whether not more than, not less than, for heavy metals, allergens, different contaminants. Other cases, those are going to be set by you, your client, as part of the quality management system or your quality planning. But I think it's very important that you always want to be focused on increasing your quality, your product performance, where you can control. To really what you want to do is back up your label claims. And when you can do that, typically clients will have confidence in your product. And we've seen with our clients that tends to increase market share, margins, and really reduce the aha moments in the fire drills, which, prevention is always better than reaction. So it's critical to bolster your product and your brand stewardship, your company's reputation. It helps you sleep good at night. It's the right thing to do. So some of the things we're going to talk about, I think, should be helpful with that. Okay? All right. So now we're at the point where I'm going to kind of hand things over to my colleague, Kaylin Bance. So Kaylin, with that, take it away.
Thank you, Dave. So food fraud and adulteration is another risk associated with ingredient verification. One of the many questions we receive is regarding what products are even susceptible. Unfortunately, most ingredients can be potentially targeted, including but not limited to spices, oils, honey, juices, dietary supplements, and seafood. The motivation behind food fraud often lies in finding ways to make products cheaper, but sometimes it is unintentional. Some examples of food fraud include artificial colorants in spices or diluted products. An often seen example is extra virgin olive oil, which is diluted with lower grade, cheaper oils. Just this past January, we offered 2 detailed webinars regarding the food fraud. This is a short overview, but our scientists recently presented more in depth in January. These resources are available on our website in the Resource Center, or you can let us know at the end if you want a copy. One example of fruit fraud is what happened in pet food. So a pet food manufacturer that's been in the market for about 15 years had established suppliers and as a result had reduced the screening frequency of their raw materials. Due to supply chain interruptions, the supplier was unable to source a new batch of taurine. In an effort to meet the supply needs, the supplier decided to source from a new vendor. However, that vendor did not tell the manufacturer. As a result, the pet food company had to recall 4,000 pounds of dog food, and the brand name took a negative media hit because the FDA completed an audit on the taurine that the lot was used and found that it was adulterated with melamine. So managing risk comes from having proper preventative measures for your company in the form of robust quality management systems. Something you may want to ask yourself is, what preventative tools and procedures do I have in place? Are they robust enough to consider all potential sources of risk? Chemical verification testing is often referred to monograph testing, since it's using compendial methods, accepted across many of the industries. And now let's explore what is chemical and ingredient verification testing and why is it performed. The FDA and ultimately your quality program should require that you establish controls for verifying that all raw materials inputs meet the intended identity, potency, strength, and impurity profile, intended to ensure the finished product will meet the specified requirements. A consistent and rigorous testing schedule will alert you to any impurity and deviation. There are 2 forms of verification testing. Compendial testing utilizes standard recognized methods that are accepted worldwide. They include, but aren't limited to, the US Pharmacopoeia, USP for short, the Food Chemical Codex, FCC for short, and AOAC methods. There are dozens of additional compendia methods available, and in the pictured C of A, you can see multiple different compendia methods used that can be applied to a single material. Non-compendial testing includes methods created by clients and industries, and can even include custom methods. These methods typically require a more advanced setup to ensure that they can be supported when the ingredients go to suppliers and manufacturers. Non-compendial methods are often seen when testing novel ingredients, such as a laboratory-created vitamin supplement. During the cases where compendial methods are available, any reputable lab should be able to recommend a suitable alternative testing approach. This example C of A is a product that doesn't have specified methods. In order to complete the testing required, a combination of compendial and non-compendial methods would be employed to meet the target specifications. Ingredient testing is performed on a wide variety of raw materials, ranging from commodity chemicals like caustic, acids, and certain bulk oils, to other ingredients used in food, beverages, dietary supplements, over-the-counter products, pharmaceuticals, and many other industries. There are more than 10,000 published compendia, and more are being added every day, as well as new testing techniques, so keeping up can be a full-time job. And how do you know which tests are needed on your raw materials? As you can see from this list, there are dozens of different testing types, and knowing what test is needed for your ingredient can be challenging. Most of the time, testing will be based on your product specifications, but working with a qualified, accredited third-party lab may be a better option for your business. As there are a lot of analyses that can be done on ingredients, there are a lot of techniques that can be used to perform those testings. Here is a general list of commonly seen techniques you may see being used for identity, purity, strength testing. And then here are a few other techniques specific to elemental analysis that may be used. These range from inducively coupled plasma to ion chromatography to EDXA that can detect boron to uranium on a semi-quantitative basis with a single non-destructive elemental scan. And with this, I'll pass it back to Dave.
Oops. All right, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully you didn't get dizzy as we're spinning the computer around. We got kicked out of our conference room, so we're in an office now. But things you all want to think about once you've determined, okay, what is the portfolio of tests that we need to perform to be able to accept our raw materials or control our product quality, purity, strength, to manufacture a consistent, safe, and high-quality product, is you need to think about, okay, can we do this with our internal lab? Or maybe you're growing rapidly and you need to think about a consultant or a third-party lab, or you want to do some consolidation. So obviously, you know, from a Eurofins standpoint, we're going to have a little bit of bias since we are a testing laboratory. But in terms of the considerations that we're going to talk about in the next few slides, these apply to any independent, third-party accredited laboratory. And really, at the end of the day, a laboratory should not just provide results. I tell people data is a dime a dozen. They should be a trusted partner that you can think with, that's really a part of your business team, and they're going to help you to grow and give you confidence in your products, in your brand, for high purity, high quality, consistent potency and purity ingredients and products at every step, from when raw materials come in to when products leave, all the way up and down the supply chain. So important things to think about. Really, the first factor I tell folks to think about is, depending on your product and type of testing needed, is what kind of accreditations should my laboratory or my consultation partners have? Is that ISO 17025 certification? Do I need to be CGMP or GLP accredited for 21 CFR compliance? What about, are we handling controlled substance? Do we need to worry about Form 222, Drug Enforcement Agency? Do we have meats or dairy or seeds? Are we crossing, in some cases, state or country lines where the U.S. Department of Agriculture gets it out? In some cases, there's industry trade groups. So you want to think about not only the accreditations, but which methods are accredited. Are they accredited for my particular matrix? In many cases, the compendia are for a finished product or a raw material. Maybe you're doing something with a blend. So Are we able to utilize that method for it? So there's a lot of things to think about. What other quality standards does that lab meet? What other type of compendia do we think about? Do we need to audit the laboratory? Do we just need to do a desk audit? Do we need to go there in detail? Do we need to write a quality plan? So these are all things that most quality professionals knows, but if you're maybe in manufacturing or in a support type of a role, these might be new to you. So you want to be sure to ask those kinds of questions, and any reputable third-party lab or consultant should be able to answer those very quickly for you. So now we've talked about the accreditations. Now what about technical and regulatory expertise? Are they going to offer support for if I have problem solving or answering? And okay, what about if I have a question on the certificate of analysis they get me and I want to talk to a scientist? Can I do that? Or am I only allowed to talk to my salesperson or somebody in client services who's the gatekeeper and won't let me talk to the scientist when I need that for an OOS, or maybe your downstream customers asking you questions? So those are things to ask. Do they really understand your product matrix? You know, there's a lot of labs that specialize in just finished products, some just in raw materials. Well, what about if it's work in process or up, down within the supply chain? Do they have the experience upstream, midstream, downstream? Do they have actual experience being in a manufacturing plant? So those are questions you should ask. Do they run scientifically valid methods providing accurate and defensible data? Unfortunately, there's a lot of small startup labs. They have great websites, but you know, if you go and audit them, you might find that things leave a little to be desired. So again, trust but verify. What happens if there is an out-of-spec situation? A lot of times the first thing to do is blame the laboratory, but oftentimes, as we all know, it can come down to your manpower, your machinery, your methods, the environment, all the different things that go into your cause and effect diagram. And again, do they have access to be able to speak with the performing technicians, chemists, scientists, to really explain? Oftentimes there's a logical explanation as to why there was an aberrant data point. And by understanding that, you can gain control of your product, your process. Next, do they offer warm, responsive customer support? So having an access to a team that can give feedback in a timely manner, both technical, but sometimes it's just, hey, where's my sample? Where's my invoice? I forgot my login to go look at it online. We're used to those. Those are natural, and they should be able to, a good partner should be able to do those things. Do they respond in minutes or hours, or is it days, weeks, or years? And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that it's the latter. Do they provide local support, maybe in a time zone that's friendly to me? If you're working with a lab on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast, you want to make sure they have hours that's conducive with your time of business. We work in a global economy. You may be sending things from Europe or Asia to where you need, early morning, late at night, translation language services. So again, Eurofins is proud to report that we're able to conduct business in many languages. We routinely do things in Japanese, Spanish, German, English, and a few dialects from there. If you have something else, Google Translate, and we've got folks in 57 countries we can get involved. So, and really, when you interact with whether it's consulting and assurance partners or the actual testing lab, do they feel like an extension of your quality assurance, your quality control, your product stewardship, your R&D? If they don't, that's kind of a warning sign. You may want to have a heart-to-heart with your testing partner, and maybe you can strengthen that relationship. And the answer is no, maybe you have the wrong partner. So anyway, when you define what is really warm, responsive customer support, everyone does it. You ought to be able to measure it. You ought to be able to measure it in terms of turnaround time, access, service level, net promoter scores. You can really put data to that. And so ask your partner, what kind of metrics do they track on that? And if they kind of hem and haw and stammer, maybe you need to ask tougher, harder questions. And think about, do they respond, with timely feedback? Is it technical in nature? Is it, sometimes it's just, where's my sample, things of that nature. Are they solution driven? Is the goal just to generate more testing, or is it solve your problem? If you're a trusted partner, they don't want to do testing for testing's sake. They should be interested to solve your problem. By doing that, in the long run, they should gain, more of your wallet share in terms of testing. Can they provide last-minute rush services? Do they have the capacity or capability if you decide to slam them, with a large study? And the next, think about comprehensive solutions. So maybe your role is just in quality, or maybe your role is just in manufacturing. But you have partners that are accountants. You have partners that are lawyers. You have partners that work in, purchasing or shipping, receiving. If you've got 10 different labs, that's 10 different places they need to audit, 10 different invoices, 10 different payments every month, 10 different systems look up data. Oftentimes we see a trend where people want to consolidate to maybe from 10 or 12 partners to 2 or 3. It's a lot easier to manage, and also your procurement folks can leverage those maybe to gain not only pricing breaks, but better payment terms or rebates, or there's just other benefits from kind of the one-stop shop approach. Do your testing partners offer a comprehensive portfolio of not only testing, but assurance, inspection, global support, anything that's coming down the pipe? And are they prepared to adapt with emerging trends around the world? And do they offer a comprehensive list of methods and technical details? Again, if the answer is no, you might want to think about exploring other potential partners that are out there. So, in terms of the takeaways, we've been talking now for about 30 minutes. We appreciate the 151 of you that have still maintained contact here. But really what you want to do is you want to visit your partners, whether that's the raw material partners or your testing partners. Visit, and by visit, sometimes that may be a Teams meeting, a Zooms meeting, a WebEx meeting. It might be an email, a phone call, a FaceTime. But stay connected with them regularly. Audit them, whether that's a desk audit, a paper audit, or on-site audit. And by doing that, and always thinking about the different risks that we talked about, right? You're going to be able to stay ahead of the curve and mitigate those risks. And again, verify not just your ingredients and suppliers, but your third-party testing partners, and really anyone that's whispering in your ears offering consultation, training, because there's been a lot of breakthroughs with tools and techniques that are out there, that are online, that maybe offer a way to bolster your brand, your quality, and mitigate risk. So anyway, I think with that, we want to say thank you, and we're now ready for our Q&A section.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Dave and team. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a poll right here. If you liked what you heard in the presentation today and would like someone to follow up with you after, please click on yes. And it looks like we have received quite a few questions that have come into the chat here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with these at this point. The first question that has come in is, what are potential consequences of failure to comply with US FDA Food Safety Modernization Act?
All right, Kayla and I decided I'm going to answer that one. So when you think about adulterated foods, they're potentially subject to FDA-mandated product recalls. Remember, the FDA has authority to suspend or revoke a facility's license to operate, basically rendering you unable to produce or sell food in the United States of America. Now, secondary or indirect consequences of that failure to comply with food safety modernization guidance, oftentimes including have the FDA actually bill you hourly for facility inspections and provide documentation for any deficiencies or corrective actions, really until you get off of whatever their consent decree was. And remember, downstream buyers are likely to be reluctant to do business with you if you can't show proof of compliance with Food Safety Modernization Act, because there are so many things, whether it's BRC, SQF, or voluntary compliance measures. And remember, when the FDA gives you a letter of attention, it's posted on their website. It's under the Freedom of Information Act, and your competition will be more than glad to promote that on social media. So it's kind of like dirty laundry and Live at 5. That's the case of where probably bad media is not going to be good for your brand or for your CEO or for your stock price. So, but that's a great question. We get questions like that all the time, and we've helped a lot of folks to navigate through those situations when unfortunately there is adulteration, which 99% of the time it happens accidentally because of something that was an unintended consequence. Next question, please, Amy.
Yeah, next question. What several techniques can we implement to prevent foreign matter or unintended adulterants from contaminating my products?
Wow, that's a great one. Kelly, is that something maybe you wanna take a shot at?
Sure. So first, excuse me.
Here, we're turning the camera to get on Kelly Foley, our lab director for Monograph. So go ahead, Kelly.
First, I would implement a periodic cleaning of all parts of your process. So start, middle, end, every shift, every product line. You can control and document all your maintained activities. So really, it's that any changes that you do, that change control, documenting all those processes are really important to be able to track it back if there is something. And then maintain your building and process integrity. So you need to do that preventative maintenance, right? Make sure you have no insects, no vermin, there's nothing getting in from your building, and that kind of extends out to your processes too. Is there anything you can do to make sure you have that preventative maintenance done?
I think two more. Take a close look at your water systems.
Yeah.
Make sure they're clean, sanitary, and your HVAC systems. Change bag houses, filters, inspect regularly, because a dirty HVAC system will basically spread pathogens and contaminants throughout the manufacturing process. And that's always a challenge, whether it's semiconductor, pharmaceutical, dietary supplements, or just any. It's just, maintaining a good, sterile production environment. But,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right, great job, Kelly. What other questions do you have for us there, Amy?
Yeah, next one that came in. What types of ingredients or food products have the greatest risk of non-compliance with FSMA guidance?
I don't know. Kaylin, you want to take that one?
All right.
Kaylin, hold on. We're turning the camera here on Kaylin. All right, go ahead.
So any products with elevated risk to human life, if the purity or potency is affected, will be most closely scrutinized by the US FDA and general consumers. Infant formula, adult nutritional beverages, OTCs, pharma products, those have all been tainted or adulterated will quickly garner negative media attention, and rightfully so.
All right, thank you for that. It looks like we have several other ones coming in, so I'm probably going to ask a few more of these. I think we have like three or four more questions, but I will pause. I know I also have been getting quite a few questions that have come into the chat about the presentation. So just a reminder, as I mentioned earlier on, you will receive a copy of the slide deck as well as a recording within the 3 business days. So in case you missed something or you want to go back and reference anything, just wanted to let everyone know. So moving on to the next question here, we actually have Thomas from DreamPack asks, we're right down the road in New Berlin as well, and they send samples daily. He said it's good to see everyone from Eurofins. Could we review some of our products and discuss appropriate food fraud tests appropriate for our liquid water enhancers and at what frequency?
Sure, that's a great question. There are some confidential aspects of that because of your specific ingredients and facility. So I think that rather than offer a generic question to 130 participants on the webinar, I think that would be best suited to maybe a one-on-one conversation. And obviously, you guys are right around the corner from us. So just let us know some availability. You can come here to the lab. We've looked at the mask mandates and whatnot. We'd be happy to come to your place of business, and we could walk through those. But again, we're going to look at frequency of your batch runs. We're going to look at all your raw materials that go into those, the testing frequency, the specifications, things of that nature. And then what we'll do is we'll put together a customized testing plan and protocol that's consistent with both your label claims, your HACCP plan, and really your overall product and process control plan. So we have something we're always looking for fit for purpose. That's really what you want. It should be common sense and fit for purpose. But that's a great question from the folks there at DreamPack.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And then the next question that has come in, can you provide an unusual example of food fraud other than the olive oil that you've gotten involved in?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. We need to have something that maybe wasn't in the public eye, because again, for purposes of confidentiality, we get involved in a lot of things that are recalls or legals or insurance, and obviously we can't talk about this because we take confidentiality higher than all things, and I could be subject to ethical claims and financial claims. I'll tell you one that was interesting. We had a situation where, due to a changing supply chain, roasted different vegetables. So roasted different vegetables going to a variety of supply chains. We're getting smiles from my colleagues. We're coming in from farms all across southwestern United States and Mexico. It was unusually dry and hot at that time, and the way they did things is they would prepare all these different vegetables with different seasonings, and then they were flash frozen and then transferred on refrigerated trucks to a central warehouse. And these are cases of products that were frozen, and after 2 or 3 days in the deep freeze, minus 20 degrees centigrade, they were growing and exploding. If you think about a pallet that's 4 feet wide, 4 feet deep, 6 feet high, all of a sudden, like a giant Jiffy Pop, these things are exploding. You don't expect things that are frozen to do that. So Eurofins was called in to sample those. We collected full portfolio samples. We had a team of our folks there. I remember we had several carts with coolers with dry ice. 5-pound limit on dry ice, just FYI, when you want to clear TSA per cooler. And the TSA actually worked with us. We got them all back to the lab same day. And we had a number of folks looking out the window seats as we were flying on the airlines, and we got them all back. And we ended up having to do a full suite of microbiological. We had to look at pH. We had to look at, we did full microbiome. We did a GCMS screen. We did all kinds of things. And we kind of learned something. There are actually microorganisms that slow down at cooler temperatures. They don't completely stop when you get below about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it was just this very unusual situation where they were flash freezing, and on the surface it was cold, but the product was still the core in these pallets, because they weren't doing a thorough freezing. There was a temperature abuse, and the core product was still, in the 50 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit range. Microbial action was happening. You were generating, peroxides, off gases, the things that the microorganisms express. And so the product, was basically growing and bursting, because small incremental off-gassing, when you take it, 20 cases wide by 20 cases tall by 60 cases high, was causing these pallets to literally expand and explode. And ultimately resulted in an insurance claim. No, the product actually went into the marketplace, but I think it's safe to say that was maybe one of the more interesting projects that we worked on. But there's many others. Unfortunately, due to confidentiality, we can't talk about some of those.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dave. And it looks like we are kind of nearing the end of the questions here, but the last one that I have, does Eurofins work with a certain size of company? This question comes from a small company, and they're wondering what size companies we work with usually.
Amy, let me give you the short answer, and that would be no. And I'm going to give you the long answer, which is heck no. We can tailor solutions to a 1 or 2 person, virtual company, because Because in many cases, that small company, you're focused on sales, marketing, maybe you have a co-packer. So virtual companies are very popular, and we work with a lot of those folks, as do all 800 plus Eurofins labs. And obviously the mid-sized companies, because oftentimes in the mid-sized companies, maybe they're looking at insourcing some testing, but they maybe want to outsource some of their consultation and insurancing. And with a lot of the large companies, they're looking and saying, hey, we need to consolidate things. So there is no one size fits all. We will work on a customized, tailored solution that meets your requirements, whether that's turnaround time, location, a courier solution, an online solution, the right testing portfolio, pricing, whatever it takes, we'll customize to meet your requirements. So no, there is no one size company that fits all. We're flexible, and we look forward to doing whatever it takes to earn your trust and hopefully a shot at your business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it looks like I mentioned, we are coming towards the end here. That does wrap up our Q&A session. If some questions do come in and we have not addressed those, we will follow up offline with you individually. So in case we've seen a question or missed it coming through, we will certainly follow up. And again, I want to remind everyone that a recording of the webinar along with a copy of the slides will be available within 3 business days. And if you are selected as a winner of our Amazon gift cards, we will follow up with you by email. So I want to again thank you, Dave, as well as Kaylin and Kelly, for your expertise and presentation today. And thanks everyone for attending.